Now, one of Nigeria's biggest challenges is corruption, and despite government's efforts to tackle this problem, it remains the single greatest obstacle preventing Nigeria from achieving its enormous potential. Every now and then, Nigeria's leading anti-graft agency, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, exposes top officials and citizens responsible for stealing billions of naira, making one wonder if this administration's commitment to fight against corruption is having any impact. With a number of cases coming to the limelight, many Nigerians believe that adequate punishment of crimes of theft could deter others and ensure a drastic reduction in a cancer that has eaten deep into the fabric of the Nigerian society. Although President Buhari declared an anti-graft war during during his campaign in 2015, how much difference has it made on the country? So joining me on TVC Breakfast to talk about this is a lawyer, Enibe Effiong. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Right, to start with, what do you make of the recent corruption cases in the news involving the AGF Ahmed Idris, the former NDDC MD, and also the former Speaker Patricia Ete?
It is quite astonishing that these very frightening allegations of gross stealing of public funds is emerging just months to the 2023, general elections. Under Section 15, Subsection 5 of the Constitution, it is expressly declared that the state shall abolish all corrupt practices and abuse of power. And it is on the basis of this constitutional mandate, on the basis of this constitutional objective, that anti-corruption laws like the Economic and Financial Crimes Establishment Act, the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Act, ICPC Act, the Anti-Money Laundering Act, and even the recently passed Proceeds of Crimes Management Act have been put in place among other laws. Now, one would have expected that given the electoral promises, given the very basis upon which this president was elected, which was primarily on the promise of fighting corruption, on the promise of ending or significantly addressing the endemic issue of corruption, one would have expected that we will not be confronted, we will not be assaulted as a country with these very, very frightening and shocking allegations of stealing. When you have the Accountant General of the Federation arrested while still in office by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission on allegations of stealing or looting 80 billion. One wonders where the fight against corruption is really going, because under the Constitution, the Accountant General of the Federation is supposed to be the chief accounting officer of the federal government of Nigeria. He's supposed to prepare a report, the Accountant General report annually, to show how government finances, how government revenue has been managed by every ministry, including the presidency. And yet, that is the man we are hearing has acquired so many properties abroad, has acquired so many properties in the country, under a president that is fighting corruption. And of course, the case with NDDC. When these presidents came in, they told us they were going to revamp the NDDC. They told us they had even set up, a forensic audit committee. What has happened to the report of that committee? Nobody has been put on trial. No single contractor has been arrested on the basis of the NDDC audit. We had what they call the Interim Management Committee. We had what they call, the sole administrator. Nothing has come out of it. We have seen ministers accused of corruption. Nothing has come out of it. So my verdict as a Nigerian is that just like other promises of this president, the promise to fight corruption has not been delivered. It is as clear as crystal. This president has not taken this matter seriously. Because you must also look at perception. You must also look at perception. What has been the perception of Nigerians about this president? Even from his personal lifestyle, he had told us, for example, he was going to reduce the aircraft in the presidential fleet. That has not been done. The president has told us the office of the First Lady was going to be abolished. Today, Nigerians have a First Lady. These are promises that if the president had kept to them, one would have clearly seen by his own body language, by his own policy, by his own personal life, that this man is really interested in fighting corruption.
So you've actually touched on two male genders in this, corruption strife. But then what about the former speaker, Patricia Ete, the scandal around her? What do you make of her own story?
I don't know where this is heading, because Patricia Ete has been out as speaker for several years. I do not know why it took the economic and EFCC so long to investigate her. But what is of interest to me is not so much about the timing, it is the merit of the allegation. If Patricia Ete actually committed the offenses or the allegation that had been leveled against her, let the matter go to court. But I must also caution that in recent times, EFCC has been losing their very high-profile corruption cases. Look at the case with the former MD of NNPC and several others who have been discharged and acquitted by the court. So beyond media trial. In fact, my assessment is that EFCC seems to have a bit derailed from fighting corruption to even focusing almost entirely on what they call Yahoo boys.
We'll actually look at how EFCC has been used, or how they have actually tried in their fight against corruption. But let us look at the man recently in the news. After serving a term, President Muhammad Buhari reappointed Mr. Idris Ahmed in 2019, despite some Labour people saying no, he has actually attained the age of 60. Do you think that has allowed him to continue to pilfer the public funds?
The worst form of corruption is nepotism. And Nigerians must be courageous. Nigerians must be honest in addressing this point. A president who has, an almost incurable appetite for nepotism cannot fight corruption. That you have people who have reached statutory age of retirement being retained, and this is not exclusive to
it. It may not be as a result of nepotism. It could be as a result of the fact that it feels that these are the people that can do the job.
Why is it always those who are supposed to retire?
Of course, you can trust people that you know.
Well, a president who can only trust people he can know has no business governing a diverse country like Nigeria. As I speak to you, right, we have the same problem in immigrations. We have had the same problem in Nigerian customs. Almost key agencies of the federal government, we have this president bringing people who should be resting with their grandchildren to come and lead key institutions of state.
It could be as a result of experience, experience garnered over the years.
What has it translated to? Where has the experience taken us to as a country? This has nothing to do with experience. This is about a president who has not been able to discover potentials to bring out people that can serve the country diligently. When people have clocked their age of retirement, allow them to retire. But Buhari keeps keeping them in office. And that is why we are witnessing what we are witnessing today. Because there is no policy of consequence. People know that they can do whatever they like and they can get away with it.
You may not want to blame the president for the misgivings of some of the elected public or appointed officials. It could be that you find a job for someone, you can't help them to do it. If I assume or if I believe that you can do something, and then I'm giving you that position to prove yourself, prove your worth, prove how much you're worth your salt, and you're not able to do it, I shouldn't be blamed for that.
Yes, to the extent that I am a serious-minded president. Because when you have a president that gives a presidential directive that if you want to run for office, tender your resignation before Monday, and you have Attorney General who was contesting for governor of Kebbi State, I'm talking about perception now. You have Ngigi, who is Minister of Labour, who said he wanted to be president, and you have a couple of others who said they had political ambitions, and suddenly we hear they are no longer resigning. If I was saving you and you were my president, will you take my word seriously? This is about perception. Those who are working for Buhari know that this president simply cannot take action. It has taken 7 years. We have not seen any significant cabinet reshuffling. Nobody has been seriously fired on account of corruption, on account of non-delivery on promises. This is why these people will have the audacity to steal the kind of money they are being accused of stealing. Because they know that the man they have as president simply cannot act. Look at the security. The president keeps saying he has directed the IG, he has directed the military, nothing comes out of it. You must take responsibility. That is what leadership is about. So when as commander-in-chief and president, you give directive and it is not followed, and there is no sanction, there is no punishment, you are encouraging impropriety. You are telling those that you appointed that they can do whatever they like and they get away with it. That is why the country is the way it is today.
Probably part of taking the action is when we have the Minister of Finance, suspending the AGF. 80 billion naira, we know that is a huge sum of money. But why is it that if EFCC invites people of such, position, they tend not to honor the invitation, and even sometimes when they get summons from the National Assembly, they do not even honor it. Why is it always like that?
Because EFCC in Nigeria is weak with the strong and strong with the weak. There is a perception out there that this current EFCC, as it is today, is not really interested in going after the big guys. And you remember, the very infamous joke of the president, who jokingly or seriously, whichever it was, said, oh, don't go after the big guys, right? Because there will be so many of them. So there is this perception that EFCC cannot do anything. It is when you are weak, it is when you are vulnerable, or when there is politics or political motivation, that is when you see the strength of EFCC.
I feel that contradicts what we are seeing now. AGF, to some extent, is a big guy.
Why can't they arrest him? He doesn't have immunity from arrest.
But it was picked up after he didn't honor their invitation, don't you think?
It took a while. The point I am making is, under the EFCC Act, I think section 15 or so, EFCC has special powers to even look at your lifestyle and say on the basis of your lifestyle, you couldn't have earned this money legitimately. Where is the place of intelligence gathering in all this? If these allegations are true, how was he able to buy all these properties without going through financial institutions? And if he went through financial institutions, what happens to all the agencies that are in place that are supposed to track this kind of monetary transactions? That shows you that there is no serious commitment to the fight against corruption. And I have cited the examples. The evidence is glaring. The verdict of the Nigerian people, and I believe truly, and I'm convinced that the verdict of history would have been that this president has not delivered on the fight against corruption. And this is painful because he came to power almost singularly to fight corruption and insecurity.
It could be that he's trying all its best to fight corruption, to stem the tide of corruption. But then, just like we say, or just like people say, corruption fights back. Could it be that the corruption has been fighting back so much so that we tend to see corruption fighting really as against us, or this administration fighting corruption to a standstill?
Before I answer you, one of the things I agreed with Buhari in 2014, 2015, was his very, popular statement that if we don't kill corruption, corruption will kill us. Tragically for the Nigerian people, 7 years after, it does appear that this president truly realized, but unfortunately could not kill corruption. And corruption is not killing Nigerians. But if you have realized that corruption is fighting back, if you have realized that you have been overwhelmed by corruption, what is the honorable thing to do? The constitution has a process to resolve that. It is called resignation, because it goes to capacity. If you came to fight corruption and you realize that you have been overwhelmed by corruption, you realize that you can no longer fight corruption, that people who are close to you can do whatever they want, for the sake of honor, please resign. But if you cannot resign, you must deliver on your promises. Unfortunately, this is 2023 is almost here.
Is it possible for anyone in this country? Because just like you said, if you're not in power, you may think it is easier to do, but then when you get to power, you realize that it's easier said than done. And so much so that even if you go to heavens and bring the best of the angels to come and rule this country with a system that will run in this country, it may be difficult to fight corruption. Don't you think so? That fighting corruption is not synonymous, or is not in tandem with the kind of system we run in this country. Do you believe so?
System is put in place by leadership. System is regulated and governed by a leader. A leader is the face of the system. It is not difficult, for example, because we had the first lady of Nigeria, Aisha Buhari, coming out to tell Nigerians that even in the State House Clinic, there is no paracetamol. This is the State House Clinic that the president of the country is supposed to be treated. The examples are glaring. I have just cited even the ones that are very simple. Because it is about perception at the end of the day. If I am president, and I said, you can't do this under me, then you will not do it. And I keep doing it, and you do it, and there is a price to pay. Others will learn from it. So this is not about the system or the fight being so difficult. Or governance. There is nothing complicated about governance and leadership. The question is, do you have the right intentions? Do you have the courage? Are you truly committed to delivering? Because if I said I was going to, reduce the aircraft in the presidential fleet, to reduce the cost of governance, to fight corruption, to check Western ethics, and 7 years after I have not delivered. Several examples, several promises you made, you have not delivered. If I was serving in your government, what will the perception be? So this is more about the perception of the person of the president. And that is the reality that is staring us in the face as a country. This president must also think about his place in history. When I am no longer president and return to my shield as Major General Muhammadu Buhari retired, no longer commander-in-chief, in the history book of Nigeria, what will I be remembered for?
Well,
that is the question Buhari should be asking himself.
Looking at part of the systems is that of the judicial system, where you also belong. There is no way you want to fight corruption without making use of the judiciary. So has the judiciary lived up to expectation as expected?
I do concede to the argument that the slow pace of justice and even the system of justice had also to some extent impeded the fight against corruption. But don't forget, this is still boiled down to one thing. And it was the problem that Chinua Achebe had recognized in his book, The Trouble with Nigeria. It is leadership. Because judicial reform is supposed to be at the heart. It's supposed to be at the center of every government that really wants to fight corruption. 7 years after, while the judiciary can reform itself administratively, but at the level of policy, at the level of legislation, it has to take the executive and the legislature. Some of the laws have been put in place. But I do concede that our court system is also partly responsible for this. But before you blame the judges, you must ask yourself, under what conditions are they working? Right? Under what conditions are Nigerian judges working? Right? I was in the Federal High Court just about 2 days ago. And you look at the case on the cost list. In a day, a judge will have 20 cases, 25 cases to attend to. Right? One judge, how many judicial assistants do they have? What support do they have to fight corruption? And does the government even respect the judiciary? Because I was before a judge 2 days ago who was complaining bitterly about how the government has degenerated, how there is so much disobedience for court orders. So when even the judiciary is not respected, it is a problem. But that is not to make an excuse.
Yeah.
If there are judges that are not working in line with the fight against corruption, if there are judges that are complicit, the National Judicial Council is there. The executive arm of government knows what to do.
Right.
So before we blame the judiciary, let us agree that we had a man in 2015 who said he was going to fight corruption, and tragically for the Nigerian people, that promise has not been delivered.
Well, we'll continue to see how this is going to unfold. 3 corruption cases and some other cases that we've actually been following. We'll see how it goes at the end of the day. I would love to have this conversation again, but then the time is just really not our friend. Lawyer Inibe Effiong, it's always a delight to have you.
My pleasure always.
Thank you.
Thank you.